JP, what do you want to play with today?
Energy drills.
Energy drills.
I want to do more of the instant inductions.
More instant inductions. Okay.
Never quite got the handshake one.
Oh, you want to do handshakes? Okay.
Learn some more stuff.
That's the handshake interrupt with you when we were doing it.
That's not really a handshake interrupt. The one where you pull them. It's not a handshake interrupt. Handshake interrupt. First of all, you know why a handshake interrupt works, right?
Because you expect it to be something. Your mind is absolutely pre-programmed for handshake. All of a sudden, it's not what you expect, and your brain searches for what the fuck's going on.
Martially, actually, well, pretty much, like all humans work in loops, in programs, so to speak. Bandler calls them motor programs, but basically, when we begin a motor program, we can't leave it until we finish it. Sistema makes use of this all the time. Because one of the things they're going to do is they're going to teach you how to, first of all, interpret force. So you learn how to get hit really hard and learn how to absorb the force. And as you're learning how to absorb the force, you're learning how to yield along vector lines. And then after a while, you begin to, you go from what we call absorb. This is David's interpretation of it, but you go from absorbing and yielding to seating to leading. So what that means is, first you learn how to take the impact. Then you learn how to be heavy and be moved by the force. Then you learn how to move your body at the same speed as the punch is entering. That's seating. And then you lead, so as the punch is coming in, you're always just a little bit ahead of it. The reason for that is because the moment you can do all that, the attacker's body and nervous system can't tell what's going on. Because the outward appearance of what it's perceiving matches its preconception. But what's really going on is an illusion. So and this happens in there's a direct parallel to any kind of human interaction. Because when anybody begins an interaction, there's 2 or 3 possible outcomes that they're sorting for. If they get anything else, they go into confusion. And they can't leave the program they're in until one of those things happens, or you take control and own them. But basically, in a martial context, when somebody's going to hit you, 3 possibilities that they've already sorted out and they're sorting for. A, the technique works, and you make contact. Technique is initiated and it's blocked and it fails, and they regroup and they start with something else, or they counter off that. 3, it misses, in which case the technique failed, you go back. In Sistema, there's going to be just enough contact that it registers something is happening, but not enough for them to determine what. And so they get locked. They literally get stuck in your body, and then the techniques come out of nowhere. They can't go on to something else. Another thing that they do is they induce psychological blindness, in that because people are naturally hardwired to hit your torso or go for your head, people don't think about attacking your arms. Even like the Filipino martial arts, where their art is supposed to focus around attacking the hands. It's really not about attacking the hands. It's about attacking the weapon, which is coming at you, which is a different mindset. But when people go to hit you, they don't aim for your arms. They aim for your torso. They aim for your head. So one of the things that happens is you get them the Sistema, through their psychophysiological training, they're going to entrain you. They're going to actually cause you to fixate on their torso and then manipulate you by weaving their torso, and you don't see the hands or the feet. It's, some of you guys experience that, right? It's really cool, but it's a direct correlation. You know, the thing about the Ryabko school, which this is what they're doing, they're not telling you this is what they're doing, is they're doing what we're doing with state control. They're linking to you and modifying their state, and you go into a hypnotic state too. And all of a sudden you're doing all these weird things and don't know why. But they're doing it in a highly dynamic, highly volatile process. Chris?
For me, the main things that I need to work on are basically I'm doing the schoolwork thing and I'm accomplishing goals, but I'm still kind of living a deferred life plan where I'm not really doing much but that right now. So
What would you rather do instead?
have more fun.
Okay, how do you have fun?
Good question. I don't know.
What do you enjoy?
Well, that's the other thing is that the main area where I still need help is with women. So
Okay, well, there's a room full of people here who can help you with that.
and the main focus of that is I still have a big issue being assertive
You have a big issue being
with
assertive.
women I like.
Oh. All right. Who wants to program to be more assertive with women? I know you. This is the whole point. Anything goes here. I don't care what it is. You guys want to do energy? Fine. You want to do being more assertive with women? Fine. What was it you wanted to do?
Energy.
Energy.
I think that would be a good one to assertive with women.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like control as you come. It's maintaining them being there, being connected.
He's a good one for that. Okay. So when we talk about energy, what specifically about energy do you want to know? It's a big fucking topic, guys.
I don't mind revisiting the drills we were doing earlier in the week.
Which ones were that?
The beginning ones where you stand like you feel the energy or the other person's energy.
That's not energy.
I consider that energy.
I know you do.
And sending
Sending and receiving?
and receiving.
Okay.
We're maybe going to get slightly further than that because we were doing pictures, but that wasn't.
Well, that'll actually, the whole point is as you get more and more entrained and as your system wakes up, you'll start, that'll happen automatically. It'll just start to happen. The first time we experienced that spontaneously was back in, it was the early 2000s. It was right before the very first CPI. And we were doing a lot of, at that time we called it advanced rapport and state control. And we were meeting at the library of, it was a college in Long Beach. I think it's SDSU, or UC, it's the Long Beach Community College, I don't know.
CSULB.
Yeah, there was a nice little lobby in there and it was open. And we'd have like 20 people, just throwing whammies at each other. And so I would have these guys just pair up, and they would start with the most basic drills, and then they'd go into different, I would start having them visualizing movies with intense scenes in them, things that would generate a lot of neurological arousal, and just try to ballpark, just sense what was coming. And then all of a sudden, like, you'd have a group over here and a group over here, and these two would be working together, and they'd be sending really vivid, like, martial arts pictures or something, movie scenes back and forth. And then all of a sudden, spontaneously over here, these people would hear them describing what they were doing, and the guys, "You got my movie!" It would be kind of like random that way, and then people would start to get more and more accurate with one another. So these are areas these are abilities that are latent, but because we don't drill them, if they ever get activated, they atrophy. It's not like you're not psychic or you're not. I don't even I hate that word. I really do, because psychic implies that there's something supernatural going on here, and to me, it's all extremely natural. Well, actually, it is kind of supernatural, but it's not paranormal. Does that make sense? Super is going even deeper into the natural abilities you already have, as opposed to acquiring abilities that are occult, or I don't know, how do I even describe it? These are all parts of who you are. They're just natural extensions of your abilities. That we just, either they're dormant, they're latent. And the other thing that'll happen is, as you work the energetic side of things, those elements will also begin to happen. The problem with people who develop them primarily through energetics is their filters go out the fucking window. They start losing their ability to balance their checkbook, their emotions just go crazy. Mostly because they haven't got the switches and they don't clean out their shit. Okay? That's why I have a big problem, not in terms of religion, but in terms of skill set with Wiccans. Because as a rule, when Wiccans are doing their energetic work, they're generating tremendous emotional energies, and then they're trying to ground it. But by and large, they don't do any kind of energetic hygiene. And they wind up being very emotional, very intuitive, but very, very unpredictable, and you never know what's going to set them off, as a rule. And most people who join Wicca and those side of things aren't actually running towards Wicca as they're running away from where they came from, which is generally the wrong reason to embrace any religion. If you're embracing a religion because the religion you grew up in made you feel less worthy, that's the wrong reason to join another religion. Okay? You should be embracing a path or a discipline because it appeals to you, not because you weren't accepted by somebody else. That make sense? Yes.
The question, if the energy drills remove filters, then I guess the corollary to that would be to work on the state control.
You have to.
Yeah.
The state, you need the state control, otherwise the state will run you. It's fundamental. It sounds like common sense, but even in NLP, where they talk about controlling your state, the emphasis is on rapport, not controlling your state. Because rapport is sexy. State control is messy. It requires you to actually exert effort. It requires you to embrace discomfort. Right? That's what makes you powerful. Moving towards the things that make you uncomfortable makes you powerful. And you find out, the minute you go towards it, that what you thought was going to be this big monster of a problem isn't. It was just your brain blowing it out of proportion to try to keep you safe. Because that's its job, to keep you safe. Okay? So, yeah, we can play with all that stuff. Energy's kind of where you guys are going anyway. And I think you still need to, address your reptilian desires with it. Like we said during the training, all this metaphysical stuff is good, but how does it help me get more? And I know I need to edit that out of the renegade stuff. But the truth of the matter is, what good is it if you can't use it for anything consistently?
Just change it to web films.
Yeah, I just hear, how does that get me more boop?
George Burns used to say, how does it help or hurt the app?
Yeah. I like George Burns. He was cool. He lived forever, too. I think Bob Hope actually outlived him, though. Didn't he?
Yeah, Bob Hope was like 100.
Well, so was George. Or he made it to 99 or something like that.
I don't know one.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start with state control then. Since everything starts with state control, let's just partner up. Go to your predicate states, and I would start with the most fundamental, most useful states, which are basically sincerity and certainty. From there, you want to go into playful, curious, and victorious. Remember the ones we wired in using pillars of power? Play with those, send them back and forth. Play with some other states to get the machinery in harmony and in tune. And then we'll start building on that and get more application specific. Sound good? This means yes, this means no. Eric, what do you want to work with today?
I don't know. I'm still working.
Then you'll do what I tell you. Go. Go. So,
I did get it right.
how were your adventures in state control? David?
Very interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah, we were sending pretty well.
Yeah? Were you accurate? That's what I care about.
For the most part, I think they were more accurate than I was. I still.
Who is they?
The original was just Saul, myself, and Tara.
Okay.
And all the stuff I sent, they got really well.
Good.
As far as me receiving, I could use improvement as I get myself out of the way.
Yeah. You'll find that some of us are really receptive and others are really projective. Yeah. I used to have decon power. Everybody knows what decon is, right? Back in the 70s and 80s, it was a very popular bug insecticide.
That's when we punched the walls.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I would get angry, I would radiate a field so intense the room would clear. It's just overwrite you. So, yeah, I think they said I had decon power. Saul, how was this for you? What'd you discover? What'd you learn? What epiphanies did you?
Stand in the sun.
You guys would rather be at the beach, wouldn't you?
I'm going to work on the town.
Yeah.
In the summer.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
It's interesting noticing the shifts. I'd like to do it actually where you write down when you receive it.
Well, we can do that. That's actually a better drill.
So we could.
Yeah.
It's not,
We've done that before, right? CPI, we've done that. Killer Influence, we've done that. It's when I do energy training, very first thing we do when we talk about energy calibration is learning whether somebody is sending or receiving and how you know somebody's sending or receiving. So the way you do that is you write down, you get a piece of paper, you write down a sequence of five actions you're going to take. Send, receive, in whatever sequence, so it's arbitrarily there. You put that in your pocket, and then you do that sequence in order, and your partner doesn't know what you're going to do, and they write down their feelings, and then you compare. And you keep drilling until you're dead on.
What I was going to say, we were doing it very much eyes closed, holding our position, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
I think throughout the states, possibly the person who's sending should shift posture. I don't know if that's a...
I think that's fine. The challenge with it is, again, because the way we originally gave you these exercises, it was designed to minimize all the other things you could be doing. Now that you guys understand what you're going for, you can begin to freelance it a little bit. The problem is that when you begin shifting physiologies and their eyes are open, they're going to start interpreting your body language. So it doesn't keep the drill as clean because you don't know what they're responding to. And visually, you can be wrong.
We were doing it eyes closed, so
yeah. Visually, that's the one thing that happens. Remember we talked about AOLs or analytical overlays? Many times, what you see and cognitively interpret is different than what your somatics are telling you. And the somatics are almost always right. Whereas the kinesthetics, which I make a little bit different distinction, because what happens a lot of times is we see a posture, we interpret what we think that means, and then generate a feeling about what we think it means.
Yeah.
As opposed to the somatic, the sudden visceral response, which is usually our first impression.
Yeah.
Okay?
So lagging time between the two of them?
There is, but usually it's so small people don't even calibrate it. But this happens a lot in the early stages of state control training, where they're interpreting body language, but don't realize that they're unconsciously interpreting body language and drawing a conclusion. Okay? You've got to understand that these things are going on, first of all, and then find ways to inoculate. Well, first of all, you have ways to make the drills very, very focused so that you can be... It's like when I'm doing martial arts, and I'm teaching people how to do sensitivity training, how to feel punches coming and stuff like that. The first thing we have them do is close their eyes. Because the visual cortex, it takes up more bandwidth in the nervous system than any other system. It competes for information and will default to visual stimuli over kinesthetic stimuli. Okay? And we need to learn to trust our somatics, our body feelings, our body sensations, because people will lie to you. They'll be exhibiting, nonverbal cues and micro expressions and things like that, and we'll get a feeling, and they'll deny it. They'll deny it. They'll deny they're feeling a certain way, even when they are. Okay.
Is it a good idea to try and assess the energy level of the person? Because I think that's something I
Define
can do.
energy level.
Emotional.
Well, I think a cleaner way of saying that would be the level of neurological arousal that person's experiencing.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
Because we don't, in terms of neurological arousal, there's only a finite set of responses the body can generate. Everything else is an interpretation and a label that we place on it. Although there are some people who are still arguing that there is a strong difference physiologically between a state of, say, anger and joy, right? If we look at them characteristically, when you're angry, does your heartbeat go up? Does your pulse get stronger? Does your blood pressure go up? Right? Does your face get red? When you're happy, does your heart rate go up? Does your pulse speed up? Does your blood pressure jump? Does your face get red? Right? So if you start to think about these states of arousal that we don't have very much diversity from a measurable standpoint. After a while, the somatics are the same. The emotional halo or interpretation might be different. The label might be different. So, I open loop myself there, but I think you guys get to see where I'm going.
The distinction.
Yeah.
That is actually very much what I meant.
Yeah. So when we're tapping into somebody's energy level, we want to match it or come in a little above. Well, again, state control tells us we have to start thinking strategically. Now, if we understand that this is the process and we want to connect with another human being, we want to start thinking about, do we need to come in low? Do we need to come in at the same level, or do we need to come in higher? Right? If you don't want to be noticed, you need to come in lower, slightly lower. If you come in too low, you're gonna pull a big vacuum in their energetics, and they're not going to. First of all, you're going to turn them off. If you come in at the same level, they may or may not even notice you. Chris is real good at this, getting rapport with groups and then just kind of infiltrating the group stealth without even realizing that he's joined. There's been group rapport drills we've done where, you basically get rapport with a group or the group leader. It's a vibing drill, which is slightly different than a rapport drill. And you come in or at the same level, and you just integrate. There's other drills where, if you want to enter a group and you want to get their attention, you stand outside the group a certain degree. You mirror the physiology of the group leader, and within a few minutes, the group will turn and open to let you in. These are all things that are other than conscious. But the other thing is energy level will also skew perception of you. If you come in way too high, at a way too high level of arousal for the group, you're going to come across as a spaz or as being really pushy. Okay? So Mystery, when he's teaching dating and attraction, he's saying whenever you enter a group or you're going to approach a group, you come in at an energy level slightly higher, just slightly higher than the group level. Okay? And that gives people a little spike, but a pleasant one, not one that's so far out of their comfort zone that they get creeped out or like, well, who the fuck, they feel like they're being attacked. Does that make sense? Okay? And you want to match the quality of that neurological arousal too. So if they're happy, gregarious, whatever, then that's the label you want to put around that state of neurological arousal. Okay? Now once you're entrained, there's that once you have entrainment, now whatever shift you make, they're going to follow you. Okay? If you come in at a playful state, they'll tend to go playful. You come in at a somber state or a more taciturn state, they're going to go more taciturn. And depending on the contrast between the state they're in and the state that you're in, can work for you or against you. But remember, we sort, the reptile sorts by contrast. It's a visual kinesthetic monster.
It seeks familiarity and sorts by contrast.
Mm-hmm. It seeks affinity, and it pays attention to what's different. Does that make sense? It runs away from the things that approach, generally, and it runs after the things that run away.
Is it bigger than me? Can I eat it? Or bigger than me? Do I need to run from it? So
Do I eat it? Do I fight it? Or do I with it? Right? saw you looking. Stop. All right. So, what states did you actually play with out in the sunshine? Were you all blissing out? Because that's not what the drill was about. The drill is about, now that you understand the process, it's very simple, right? Now you want to start getting useful. Going into states of assertiveness, states of playfulness, states of sincerity. Now we begin to expand our emotional palette, so to speak.
When we were shifting, we kept them positive, though. It was kind of neat to notice the subtle differences still in positive energy rather than negative.
Yeah. It's human nature to want to bliss out. We're not about blissing out. We're about being effective. Remember that. At the end of the day, did you get the results you came for? If your result's to bliss out, great. But every state has tactical uses. Constellations of states have tactical uses. One of the things that Mark liked to talk about was this concept of predicate states. What states form the baseline or springboard into other states? Those predicate states for human interaction tend to be trust, comfort, playfulness, attention or fascination, fascination is probably a good one, because if people are like really fixated or interested in what you're radiating or projecting, then you tend to have the window you need to move them through the states that lead them somewhere else. They're still trance states, but they're not hypnosis, or the kind of hypnosis that most people recognize. All emotional states are trances. Okay, but now what you want to do is, once you have a connection, once you've established coherence, now you start working with the states and you make gradual shifts in the states you're in that lead towards the behaviors you want to generate. And as you do that, your behaviors will tend to synchronize, and the words coming, and your tonality will tend to synchronize, and the words coming out of your mouth will synchronize, and everything will be congruent. Okay? But again, you're adding colors to your palette now. You know how to mix the color. You know how to put the water in the paint. You know how to dab it with the brush. But now we want to add. Okay, I have a red. I have a green. I have a blue. Let me add a purple in there. Let me add a pink or whatever it is. That's the whole idea. The more emotional range you can develop, and the more seamlessly you can transition from one state to the next, which is your next level. Now that once you feel you've gotten enough practice on discrete emotions, now what I want you to do is begin to go into an emotion and shift. And then shift.
When you shift with a certain emotion, you shift to a different one.
Yep.
Shift to a different one.
And take each other along for the ride. Because you know how to radiate or induce a state. Now we want to learn how to guide a state. Right? You've seen me do it. I'll bring somebody up and I'll start talking in one level, and then as I'm going through the process, all of a sudden my energy level starts to go up. You saw this a lot with Pillars of Power, didn't you? Okay? My emotive level goes up, and all of a sudden your nervous system's like doing this. Right? But I don't start there. If I can go, feel really good, and you're like, oh shit! Right? It's too strong. Right? You get this, and they go run screaming. Remember the reptile? I use the frog analogy. You guys know the frog metaphor, right? If I take a frog, yeah, how do you boil a frog? You put him in you take the pot of boiling water, you take the frog, you throw him in, he jumps out. Right? But if you take a pot of lukewarm water or room temperature water, you put the frog in it, he'll just sit there, happy as a clam. You turn up the burner 1 degree, he'll sit there, degree by degree, he'll sit there and happily boil to death. Because he won't recognize, he'll acclimate too subtly to realize when it's the point of no return. It's the only metaphor I can find that matches the process. I know it's evil, unless you like frogs. You know, if you like eating frogs, it's actually probably a good thing, but they're usually dead before they go in. So it's okay. But the bottom line is our nervous system is designed in such a way that the minute something is steady, it zeroes, that becomes the new 0 point. Okay? So if you move it degree by degree by degree, the shift is usually so subtle and it acclimates so quickly that it doesn't realize it's shifted. Okay? So the entry point is, again, synchronizing, and then we start with contrast states. So now instead of being just connected, now you understand what two polarities feel like. So you're building your ability to shift and to calibrate. But between those two polarities, there's many degrees of intensity. Once you're competent with that, then we may go from, baseline comfort to happy, to joyful, or to interested or fascinated. Any sequence of emotional states is possible once you understand shifting. Does that make sense? So, think of a scenario where you would that you might be involved with another human being. Start with an outcome that you want to have. Then sit back and start to think about, okay, what states or what emotions naturally lead to the behaviors I want? What sequence of states? What behaviors do I want them to take in sequence, in chains? Start with your outcome, work backwards. Right? And develop a state plan or a state strategy. Right? Copywriters do this all the time. They'll start with entering the question in the person's head, ask questions that elicit the pain, and start taking them through a sequence of states that lead them to want the product. You're not really doing anything differently except you're using your own instrument, your own somatics, your own kinesthetics, your own energy, if you want to use that word. I hate using that word most of the time. It's not specific enough. It gives the wrong. Just think about using the vibrational rates and frequencies of your nervous system, your proprioceptive mechanism, to cause the body to cycle through states of neurological arousal with specific filters in place, because the filtering is the emotional side of it is going to be done through your mirror neurons. Your mirror neurons are going to empathically interpret what you're sending. Your proprioceptive system is going to monitor heart rate, blood pressure, electromagnetic fluctuation, all those things. You don't have to worry about it, but those are the mechanisms that are involved. Okay? And it's going to create within you or the subject a state that is conducive to certain things and not conducive to others. Does that make sense?
We could go and I would not be able to understand whatever it is that you just said. And now it actually makes sense.
Yeah. Most people, when I talk like this, that's my biggest problem with people who do energetic, is they're so vague and so imprecise with what they do.
Chunked up.
Huh?
It's just chunked up, which is what, if you're vibing so higher up, you're chunked up.
Yeah.
So that's why.
Yeah, but that's the problem, is if you get too vague, people can't relate to it unless you're naturally working at that space, which is why energy people think they understand each other, when really they don't. Because remember, when you're vague, what happens?
Communication goes down.
Well, no, communication doesn't go down, but what happens when I use an adverb adjective presupposition?
So make it specific.
It sounds specific, right? What are you doing? You're filling in your own content into the container, right? When you get too vague, and this happens a lot in the metaphysical side, and actually when you get a room full of women, and they start talking about things like my beingness, or my, being my authentic self, or, you see all these words, right? They think they know what they're talking about until you ask them to explain what they're talking about, and they choke, or they use other extremely vague and non-specific words to describe the other term that they're using, because in their mind they're describing multiple things or multiple elements, and they don't know how to chunk down to a specific way to describe that constellation of experiences. Same thing happens. It's the exact same process when we start dealing in metaphysics and energetics. Okay, the more vague it becomes, the more we start to fill in what we think that other person means. Make sense? So when I chunk down to process, and I start talking about these are the elements that this system handles, these are the elements that this system handles, I'm still talking about many of the same things that they're doing up here. But because you have something more concrete to link it to, it becomes easier to accept on one level, and then becomes easier to do. Many times I won't give you these kind of explanations, though, because these kinds of explanations satisfy the conscious mind. And many times it's the conscious mind that gets in your way. Like when I'm teaching people how to do like no-touch combat, or move punches that are, punches or pushes that are coming at you, and just move them energetically and deflect them. I won't tell them the theory. I won't tell them the process. I won't tell them anything about it until after they've done it. Because the minute you give somebody information, the conscious mind tries to direct it. And it's the wrong mind for that kind of work. You're operating from the wrong place. Okay? You have to know what parts of the mind are most appropriate for the work you're trying to do. And let those parts do their job. Does that make sense? Some of you have seen me do that weird stuff, or other weird stuff. Chris has seen me no-touch people, right? I think I did you once or twice, didn't I?
That was a demo when we were back at Mark's place.
I know. So yeah, what we do is very much, and it looks, to the untrained observer, to the person who doesn't understand our concepts, our theories, it looks like, they're going along with it, and it's set up, but it's just understanding the dynamics of the mind and body. If you want to call it energy, go ahead. It still works. It's not very precise. Make sense? So, that being said, what I want you guys to do is, state control you can't ever get too good at it. Period, end of story. You just can't get too good at state control. What I want you to do, if you haven't started doing it already, think of an outcome or a scenario that you want to work in. Start with your outcome. The secret to being effective is starting in reverse, is working backwards from the end result. Okay? Now keep in mind, like Mike Tyson used to say, everybody's got a plan till you get hit. Right? Make your plan like benchmarks that you want to hit, but avoid trying to script out and make this super specific agenda that the minute it veers from the plan, you don't know what to do. Your sequence of states needs to incorporate your ability to perceive where they're going, if they're coming along, or where they're going, where the plan deviates. So you have to build flexibility and sensory acuity into the process. It has to be the unspoken component. Give yourself the freedom to shift as they're shift, because you can't predict how they're going to interpret what you're sending. Generalities exist, likelihoods exist, but at the end of the day, it's still influence, not mind control. Influence means I can predispose you, I can preset the parameters of where I want you to go, but at the end of the day, you still have free will, and random variables can send you in a different direction. Okay? Break up into groups and start playing. Control your state. Control your perceptual positions of power and your context. Reality engineering 101, right? Yes?
Do you have any tips for holding the state stronger, like getting even more connected into it before you switch?
Yeah, amplify it, spin it.
Okay.
Spin it, move the picture. Okay? If you guys want to today, we'll start playing with what I call the grid, which is how we can, I think spinning is one of the most practical ways to isolate, amplify, and block in feelings. But
And then do you just let it go to switch to the next one, find it, then spin that one, then?
well, again, if you're going to, the more you can feel the state within yourself. So remember, we're not projecting energy onto other people. Everyone around you is an antenna. They're not a target. So what I mean is, if I had a fire hose and I wanted to blast John, I would, right? Or if I had a super soaker, right? That's not the metaphor we're using. But if you use that, you can do things with that metaphor, but you're going to drain the hell out of yourself, and it doesn't always work.
I just meant in yourself.
Yeah. What we want to think about is sending a signal. We want to radiate something that their antenna is going to pick up. So we don't have to send to them. We just want to get the frequency and just radiate. Okay? Their system will pick it up to whatever degree they're capable of. Consciously, usually preconsciously for sure. Sometimes actually you'll see significant shifts depending on their level of neurological sensitivity and connection. But if you know what states you want, I would just put them in your utility belt. You know, set the states up in some kind of an anchor form, and then as you're connecting, just trip the anchors and go into the states. Okay, but after a while, it'll just be, okay, I'm confused, I want to go here, I want to go here. And you'll just go there. Make it really technical in terms of 1, 2, 3. After a while, you'll evolve to what we call empty hand magic, which is you'll just intend it, let it go, and it'll happen. That, by the way, is one of the biggest things when you're doing this kind of work, is you set the state, you experience it, and then you let it go. Okay? When we get into smurfing and sphere of influence, things like that, that's where people seem to miss it, is they keep trying to push the energy, they're trying to push the state. It's not about that. Human beings are not made to hold energy. They're made to conduct it. Yes.
That was my question.
Oh, it wasn't a question? You were just kind of flicking the fly or something?
I'm flicking my emotional states.
Right. So,
David,
yes.
it's a lot like when you're having a really great conversation, so like
Mhm.
the way it flows
Yeah.
from one topic to the next, it's very much flowing from one state to the next.
Mhm.
The main thing is when you get good at it, you can direct. It's not so much controlling as directing.
Yeah.
Where
Put-
you want the other person to
Yeah.
go.
Put the idea of controlling another person out of your mind, other than yourself. You have control over you. Everybody else you influence. Now, you may have a high 99 percentile degree of influence over somebody, which may give the appearance of control, but nobody ever loses their free will. They just don't have a lot of it.
And it goes back to what we cribbed, is people will sometimes believe what you tell them. They'll always believe what they conclude. So if you lead them to the conclusion, you'll be incredibly influential.
Yeah. And people make their conclusions based on their feelings. All right? So pick your context, pick your outcome, pick your states, and drill. Take as much time. Get really good at this. Okay? This is huge. I don't care what the context is. You get good at this, people will do pretty much what you want. And they'll think it's their idea. Make sense? Go. That's it. That's actually the process. Get them horny, give them plausible deniability, and tell them what to do next, which is basically usually the opportunity to act on it.
Which is the best way to get plausible deniability?
Whatever. It really depends on the level of neurological arousal, aka horniness, you've installed. The more aroused they are, the flimsier the plausible deniability can be, because the reptile's in charge. Remember, I am the reptile. I do not get angry. I make you angry, so you'll do what I want. I do not get horny. I make you horny, so you'll do what I want.
So put them in a strip club and then talk to them later.
Oh yeah. Hell yeah.
And that was the most important thing we talked about.
That exactly was.
What was that, James?
You weren't paying attention, you missed it, motherfucker. But really, if you think about it, seduction is actually very, very simple. Okay? Get them excited. Give them something to be able to justify the feeling, to be able to justify taking action on the feelings that they have and the opportunity to do it. Everything else is mechanics. Right? Really. Now, predicates. What would be some good predicate states for sexual arousal?
Me.
You?
Went through like curious to maybe what I had gone through was curious, passionate to certainty, playful to connected.
For seduction?
Yeah, well, I guess for like out and about or in the club or whatever, because I was out the end.
I think it was male mind control.
And then he went crazy. And that's the whole.
You just use breastnosis. Right?
This is crazy.
So here's the biggest challenge you're going to have, and it's not really a big challenge once you understand it, is you just got to get through the filter, the bitch shield, as some people call it the bitch shield. I call it the approach filter. Okay? Basically, the agenda you have when approaching someone is based on your state, or the state you're in is based on your agenda. Most people, when they approach a woman, their mind is on the wrong part of it. Okay? When you approach a woman, or man for that matter, you should be just trying to find out if there's somebody cool to hang out with. But guys don't think about that. They skip to the end. They skip, oh, I want to bang that person. Let's go talk to them. You're missing a few steps. Okay?
Give me the NLP phobia thing.
Yeah.
Rewind it.
Actually, you probably could. And if you guys want to play with phobia work, you can do that too. But the bottom line is when you see someone who is attractive, okay, the first thing should be, I want to find out if they're cool or not. Because they may be a bitch on steroids and you don't know. Right? The problem is that because you see somebody who's potentially attractive, you come in there with the prize mentality, or the hunter mentality, which is basically, they're the prize, I'm the hunter, and everything, remember the magic mirror? The minute you take on that position in that context, your perceptual position changes, and then your state changes. You wind up going into the wrong state, you set off their filters. You set off their early warning radar, because you're coming in at a state that triggers it. That's what they're sensitized for. They sense your agenda. Just like in Systema. Right? You guys, Systema is combat seduction. It's exactly what it is. You're coming at me, you don't perceive the shift, and all of a sudden, from out of nowhere, everything changes. Right? Same thing here. When you approach, you come in under the guise of something, well, it's not the guise of something else, but you come in at a state that doesn't set off the approach alarms, that doesn't set off that your agenda is sexual. You come in playful. You come in curious. Curious is really good.
What about innocence?
Huh?
What about innocence?
Incense?
Innocence.
Innocence?
Only at church.
Yeah, that's not gonna work.
No, not really, no. Because remember something else. You also want to trigger sexual arousal. That's the goal, right?
Sure.
See, one of the problems with most NLP and report type techniques is that they don't trigger sexual arousal, they trigger friendship. And that's where you're going to wind up. If you go in with an NLP style report technique and you don't understand vibing, you don't understand state, you don't understand sexual or neurological arousal, you're going to make a lot of friends and spend a lot of time dating your palm. Okay? And that goes for both men and women. Right? You've got to trigger sexual arousal. You've got to get them. You got to get the meat suit engaged. You got to get them thinking about juicy things. But you can't start there. It's like when I could, hi Seth, how you doing? Right? It's exactly what most guys are trying to do. You set up that huge dissonance, that energetic rift or difference. You come across as somebody with an agenda, and you're incongruent as hell.
And add a mask on it last night.
Yeah.
Couldn't even read their face. It was like, what the heck are you doing, buddy?
Yeah.
Stuff was falling out. It was like, what the...
I don't want to know about what was falling out.
Yeah,
all right?
yeah. It was
You were doing enough
all
falling out on
like,
your own last night.
No.
All right. The whole thing is you have to come in such a way that you don't set off those alarms. They don't see it coming. And I'm not saying they don't see it coming in a bad way. It's that their own freaking self-defense mechanisms cause them to miss out on an opportunity. And that's the first pre-frame right there. You're the opportunity. You're not the hunter. You're the prize. Okay? And everybody in this room, regardless of how you may think about yourself, is in fact the prize. Because if for anything else, if for nothing else, because of the last week of training that you've had. Because now you understand now more about how to find out what people want and how to give them experiences they couldn't possibly imagine and probably anybody they will ever meet. And even if this is your first week, this is the worst you'll ever be at it. They don't recognize it though. But you should. You should. Because once you take that perceptual position and you operate from that context, all of your behaviors will change automatically because it's still just the magic mirror in operation. Okay? The fact that your calibration skills may suck is a different issue, which is usually what it comes down to after that. Calibration. Just being able to figure out what's going on, being able to sense or being aware of what you're getting, the information you're getting, and what it actually means. In my course, Secret Orgasm Tips, I stated right in the marketing materials for it and in the book itself, the biggest reason, the hidden secret behind making any system of pickup or seduction work is calibration. Being able to figure out if what you're doing is actually having the effect that you want. Part of the corollary to that is getting what you think it's supposed to look like out of your fucking head and start paying attention to what are actual time-tested indicators of what the signals you're getting are. Because most of the time when I talk to guys trying to pick up women, I say, how do you know when a woman's attracted to you? It stops just short of this. All right? I mean, honestly, most guys are dumb as rocks when it comes to the subtle signals women send out. Women calibrating men, same thing. Only it's reversed because they think the guy's not interested. Because the signals that a woman's sorting for and sending out are way subtler and way more in advance of the signals a guy is sorting for. So if a woman starts out here and ends here, a guy will start here and end there. Okay? The signals have to be much stronger and much more obvious for most guys to pick up on it. Most guys will not pick up that if they're at a Starbucks looking at a book, and a woman 10 feet away wanders into the aisle and is looking at a book next to them, they don't pick up the fact that she walked halfway across the store to that aisle and is waiting. And she'll only wait for a few seconds. And if he doesn't make the approach, he may make eye contact once, twice. By 3 times, you're done. Okay? The minute she makes eye contact, that's your first indication you should approach. Women don't make eye contact with people they don't like. They avoid it. Okay? But that's not what happens. For most guys to pick up on attraction signals, the woman would have to literally hold up the sign as she's walking across the bookstore saying, "Hey, dummy!" I'm exaggerating only a little bit. Okay? Why? Because most of us are at the mercy of our neurological arousal and our own hidden agendas. The minute we go into horny mode, our sensory acuity, we stop paying attention to anything that doesn't match our filters. Remember the emotional refractory period. When your emotional state shifts, your unconscious mind will cause your perceptions, your conscious mind, to only focus on the things that reinforce the state we're in, and to not pay attention to anything that doesn't match. It's the same shit, different context. Does that make sense? So, some of the most useful states for approaching: curiosity, playful, neutral. But in all of them, you're still the prize. The more you can cultivate those states and being in that state. And by the way, when I say cultivating the state, I'm not talking about taking on a playful energy and then there's a part of you that's saying, "I'm being playful." I'm starting about being immersed in the state and just enjoying being playful. Does that make sense? Because as a rule, we don't want to hang out with people we don't have fun with. We tend not to get interested in people who aren't interested in us. The first thing you should be interested in when you see somebody that you want to talk to or interact with, and maybe ultimately date or sleep with, is, are they cool? Are they cool? And whatever word you want to put to it. So when you approach, you're testing them. Are you somebody that I have the idea that you might be somebody cool to hang out with? Right? Now show me. Show me that show me if I was right about you or not. Not please like me. Which is what most people do. Hi, please like me. Want to fuck? Right? That's about as subtle as most of us guys get, right?